Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally, and you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks. Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked with Margaret Smith and Jesse Moore. We're really excited to be here today.
We have a special guest today.
Yes. It's my mom, Mary Smith.
Mary Smith, welcome.
Yes, good morning. It's Mary.
So we were just talking. I asked you to be on the podcast. You said no initially.
Yes. It's fear of the unknown.
I don't consider you a fearful person.
No, I'm not generally.
We're
no.
cautious.
Yeah. But yeah, it takes a time to think about it. Yeah.
What's the concern?
Well, Margaret invited me to her admin group, and I surprised myself where I was super nervous. So I thought again, I'm going to be super nervous, and I have never been that nervous. I have no idea
You were very
why
nervous.
I was so nervous because I'm almost 65, and probably the last 45 years or 50 years I've spoken in front of large
Lots of
groups
times,
and been in charge of large activities and auctions and all kinds of things. So it was surprised myself.
What did you speak about at the admin group?
Oh, being you, my favorite topic. Be yourself, be you. If you can't be you, how can you be comfortable, accepting others and achieving your goals if you can't be yourself? So.
No, that's an important topic, I think, all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I work at a high school where kids are struggling.
Yeah.
Every day you see them trying to figure out who they are. And
I had an issue with my son this week where he's so great, and then he went to his mom's house for a visit and came back. When he came back, he was a different person. Like he was turned into a jerk, and I was like, "What?" And in figuring out what happened, he had some interaction with a stepbrother who is not that nice and kind of is very negative and kind of bullyish. And so when David came back, he had those qualities. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
What are you doing? This isn't you. So,
Older brother?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can imagine that high schoolers are constantly trying to figure out how to adapt and change to fit in, right? And so they're probably trying to change themselves all the time rather than being themselves. Margaret, did you ask her to talk on that subject, or did she
On the
come
BU?
up with it? Yeah.
Well, I basically said, can you just come in and tell your story? Because I think a lot of times people don't stop to listen to stories of people that have been through life before them. And that's what I grew up doing, was sitting at the table listening to my aunts and my mom and my dad talk. And I learned a lot. And so by listening to someone else's story, you can often just learn something that you can avoid mistakes, or you can avoid things that they went through, pain that they had. And then because she was so nervous, which was so unusual because usually she's one of the most outgoing, extroverted people in the room, I just started asking her questions because I knew we could talk for hours. And so asked her about things that she does that she may not even realize, because that's what I've had some self-awareness in over the last couple of years by reading more personal development books. I've realized some things that I just kind of do innately without even thinking about it, to make people comfortable, to create community, to show empathy, to show kindness, and what the ROI is on that. And so people walked away from that totally excited and really energized. There was a couple girls in particular that thankfully spoke up during that time, because I think it's important to tell people what you get from when you hear stories. And so there was a couple girls that were totally moved, and mom brought the little signs that said BU, and so they have those up on their desks now or in their car. And like Melissa from Bellingham, I told her to text mom because she said something to me afterwards, and I was like, can you please tell her that to her face, because I think we have to do that more. So no, it ended up being really, I think, empowering. And I bug my mom all the time about what is she going to do when she retires, not because I really think she needs to do anything, but because I think she's got a lot of messages to share that she doesn't necessarily understand how powerful they can be. Yeah.
Well, let's give everybody some context, because I mentioned in last week when we teased that you would be here, I mentioned that you're not here and we're not talking to you just because you're Margaret's mom. Like, that's cute and endearing, and we'd love you anyway. But you do have something to say. So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your job and what you do?
Oh, sure. So I've worked for Seattle schools for 27 years. And I started in the classroom as a special ed assistant for probably about 10, 12 years. And then I moved to the office. And so I'm the admin secretary at Ingram High School right now. I've been there for the last 15 years. And I love it. It's a wonderful job. I'm on the front line. I deal with parents and students, community members, teachers. Just every day is a different day. I never know what's going to happen each day. And that's what I like, the variety of it and the challenge of it.
So, and from what I know of your position, you're basically the assistant to the principal.
Yes, I'm the head secretary.
And how long have you had that position?
15 years, yeah.
Longest she's ever been anywhere.
Longest. I haven't stayed probably over 4 years at the other schools, 4 or 5 years. So yeah, this was a long stint for me. I really didn't think I would stay that long. I figured I would transfer to another school and start with the new staff and students, but the time has gone really fast and I've really enjoyed it. And the family members, so I've seen, 1, 2, 3, 4 kids in each family come through school and made a lot of connections with the families.
Why do you think you had longevity there?
Well, the principal, Mr. Flo, Martin Edwin Flo, has given me a lot of freedom in my job. When he hired me, the only thing he asked of me is he said, "Will you be loyal?" And I said, "Certainly."
Did he say that, really?
Yeah, I think you've hit the jackpot because I'm probably the most loyal person you ever find. So I think that was like the only job qualification he wanted from me. So yes, I'm very loyal and.
How long have you been a principal when you first joined?
Just a couple years. Yeah. Just a couple years. So he
that probably tells you how loyal the previous person was, right? if they only have one question for you,
right?
You can probably guess why the other person had to leave.
And that's also where he went to high school. So he's grown up in that school, which is pretty unusual for a principal to have gone there.
And it's a confidential position. So you have a lot of things that happen in the office and a lot of things that happen within administration. So you have to be really keep a confidence and so I think he knew he could trust me and that I would do a good job with that.
And you're approaching retirement?
Yes, I'm going to retire in August. August 1st is my retirement date.
August 1st. So you get through the summer and then
Yep. So hopefully
drop the hammer.
Yeah, so school ends June 20th, I think is our last day. And then I'll take July to hopefully train a new secretary. And then I'll be 65 July 19th. And then I'm going to retire and have a big party.
Big party?
Yeah, big party, yes.
At the house?
No, at Russell's.
Oh, at
Russell's.
Russell's.
Down the street.
Yeah, that's a nearby steakhouse.
Yeah.
Wow.
We actually think that might be the barn where my grandmother spent some time, as it turns out, randomly.
Imprisoned or?
No. My mother, when she was 18, she lived on a farm called Donnybrook Farm, which my sister Carrie says is the farm where Russell's is. And she took care of her younger sister and a couple siblings, and they went to Bothell High School, and she lived there taking care of those kids. So she had a tough upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that era.
Yeah.
That era didn't suffer snowflakes.
I know.
You had to be made out of something hardier than that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to have a party right now. It's being called the Trifecta.
Yes.
Because it's celebrating 40 years of marriage, 65 years old, and retirement.
Yeah. Big party.
Big year for you, 2019.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. So, switch gears a little bit. Margaret starts working in Pickett Street. We read a lot of books, and Margaret, when she first started working for Pickett Street, lived with you guys, lived with her parents, and she'd bring home books that she was asked to read, and then they would trickle down to you.
Yes, ferocious conversations, as Andy likes to call it. Fierce conversations. Yeah.
And so I'm just curious, out of all the books that you've kind of trickled down to you and that you've had a chance to read, what books have had an impact? What books actually helped you?
Well, Fierce Conversations was a good one. You'll have to remind me the titles of...
I gave you the 4 Agreements, which
was
the
the 4 Agreements
one.
I
That
printed
was good.
out, and then I actually did a screenshot, and I have it as my desktop at work, so it comes up
that's a
every
good
day.
idea.
Yeah, I love it. I've shared it with a lot of different
I think you
people,
also, the other one I remember giving you was the Energy Bus.
Yeah,
Which
I
was
remember
about
the
the bus
energy
driver.
bus being a good
Yeah.
one too.
But Fierce Conversations we talk about a lot, and the 4 Agreements, which was just this last year. Probably the ones we talk about the most.
Yeah.
How many books did you give Mr. Flo?
Fierce Conversations for sure.
Yeah,
And
Oh, and Leadership and
yes,
Self-Deception.
He likes audiobooks, though.
yeah,
too,
he
I
does.
remember.
He doesn't have a lot of patience for reading. The district gives him lots of books to read, and I think he reads them very carefully. But I think he skims through, and he's a very smart man. So he can
takes
get
it in.
he can get
It's like
an
photographic
analogy
memory.
of things.
Yeah.
But historically, through the years, I haven't been a big reader because I've had very limited free time. So mostly I've done crafting. Sewing and arts and crafts are my real passion. So reading, it has to be something someone says this is really good and take the time to read it. I love to read, but it just haven't had the time to do it. So in my retirement, I look forward to much more growth in reading, definitely.
Nice. What did you think of that? Of Margaret's new job when she started working at Pickett Street?
Well, my dad had his own real estate company, First Properties. So he was like a self-made man. His company was very critical to him. I think he really wished one of his kids would have taken over the business, but nobody was really at the right moment in time to take it over. But when Margaret went into the real estate area, I thought, oh, Papa would be really surprised with this. It would really make him happy. It was a new arena for her, but she has a lot of good PR skills, so I knew that she'd be good, whether she was selling real estate or working in the office, admin, that she would love it. She was trying to find her niche, definitely. The art museum was a great position. She got to work with a lot of old-time Seattleites, which was a real treat for me because she ran into some people that I knew, and it was a fun experience. But I knew she needed something more. She needed to make more money than working for a nonprofit, and she really needed to branch out. So I was very happy because I knew a little bit about you from my friend Jen Grawl, so I knew you were a good guy. I felt comfortable. And then she had the 3 months of intensive screening before she was hired, so I knew
Well,
you would be very happy with her.
It wasn't just 3 months of intensive screening. It was
Well,
starting
a
the
couple of years,
process.
yeah.
It was starting the process, and then her declining the role because she took another job, and then her coming back to me 6 weeks later.
It was meant to be.
So it was really,
It was a good
you can
match.
attribute 6 weeks to me and 6 weeks to her. Let's be fair.
No, but it's been a very good match, and it's been awesome. Andy and I both feel as parents to watch how she's grown and how you've let her become herself at your business. I mean, you've let her take big risks, and it's been amazing to watch. So.
Has that
Awesome. As a
been
parent.
scary for you at all?
Oh, sure, yes, because she's got a lot of debt.
Yeah.
So, she's a single woman, but she's very powerful, and she's taking it on, head on. So I'm really proud of her.
Well, and not just, I think a lot of people, I guess it depends. I think people kind of put Margaret in a camp of their own choosing. And what I mean by that is, I think some Margaret think of you as the duplex flipper, right? The single woman who went out and bought property and renovated it and made it happen.
That's one story.
That's one story. And then you have the admin kind of consultant. And then you have, you just have a lot of different camps. So when I hear you say that, is that related to, and when you say specifically debt, are you talking mostly about her real estate deals?
The debt.
Well, as far as the scary things that she's
the scary things. I just want her to be comfortable in her life. So I don't want to have her be so worried that she's got a lot of debt and just one income coming in. So when she was bought her second home. And I mean, I tried to say, hey, how about the $500 stove instead of the $2,500 stove, or the $150 faucet instead of the $2,500 faucet? Just looking at the big picture ahead, because Andy and I have been through so many different houses and construction, and so we know the things ahead. But she wanted what she wanted and was going to achieve it. And I know she'll be fine with her debt. But as a parent, you worry about your kids because you want them to have a good balance of a nice job and fun and friends and family and comfortable living. But she's managed. She's got 2 amazing roommates, and she's very creative and in that way of reaching her goals. So I'm confident that she's going to be successful both in work and family and her business. So I'm sure she's going to buy some next project. It's going to be even more amazing than the blue treehouse. And she won an award for it, which shows approval from the neighborhood and the city.
Yeah, it's a legit
that was exciting.
award too.
That was cool.
It was a very legit award. It was really the Monte Cristo.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Margaret won her renovation. She was nominated to win this award called the Monte Cristo Award, and it's put up by the city of Everett specifically for a home that maybe was a little bit run down, and then someone took the time and money to renovate it in a historically accurate and amazing way. And so Margaret was nominated and won an award for that renovation. And in real estate, it's one of the things I battle for all the time, where people might be anti-capitalistic or may think of real estate agents as being just money-hungry, greedy people. And really, people flipping houses adds to the value of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Someone coming in and taking a project that no one else wants and taking a chance and the risk and renovating that and then profiting off of that. Sure, it benefits them financially, but they're taking the risk, and everyone in the neighborhood gets the benefit of it. And so it's hard for me. I get my hackles get up when people start talking about
a lot
investors
of the
that way.
flippers and the investors that I met when I first started had such big hearts, and they told me that part of their spirit behind this was to improve the neighborhoods one house at a time. So I agree with you. It definitely, and that was I think in the description of the Monte Cristo Award it said the house that was an eyesore that became one of the jewels of the neighborhood or something. So it was totally an honor. It was fun. I don't know that I'll take on that big of a project again, but yeah.
Well, and I might be partially to blame. I am partially to blame because I did, when Margaret did this.
I remember what you told me.
You remember?
Totally, and I took your advice, and I don't regret it. It was definitely one of the biggest risks I've taken financially. But you said spend a little bit more money than what you're comfortable with, if that's what you're thinking of, because you'll be here for a while. And I do when I first,
beautiful home.
Yeah, when I first walked upstairs, and actually any friend that I've taken up there, like Jessica said this too. She said, "You're going to be here for a while, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." Because it's like something I had in my head for a long time, which is like when I tell people the story of how I found the house and I was driving to my brother's house, I literally looked up and I was like, I'm going to buy that house. I'm going to go tell Jesse I'm going to sell my house tomorrow and I'm going to buy this house. And I don't know if that's intuition or God or what, but it was meant to be. And it just felt right.
Well, somebody else bought it and then they didn't get it and then you got it again.
Well, and I was thinking, I was giving you advice based on flipping homes myself and then based on a recent remodel I'd done in my own house. And those are 2 different ways of renovating a home. If you're renovating it for someone else, you cheap out on some materials. Some things don't matter as much. You focus on the things that increase the saleability of the home, but not necessarily the functionality of the home.
Yeah.
And then when it's your house, I think I've done a remodel on a house and maybe cheaped out on one thing, and it bothered me for the rest of time. And so that's when I said, hey, as you do this, it'd be good to stay in budget and everything else, but don't be afraid to splurge a little bit because it'll improve the quality of your life overall. So
there's nothing like coming back to my house. I never thought I could be so comfortable someplace. Especially living alone. Now that I have a roommate, it's nice because I don't entirely love every part of living by myself. It can be kind of scary sometimes being a single woman. But I really do enjoy coming back to something that I created that because my environment totally impacts my mood, which is why I do what I do at Pickett Street to make it comfortable here. So if I'm surrounded by things that feel good, I am a happier person. So no matter what kind of day I've had, when I come home, it's like I'm so calm. It's so nice. And I think that reminds me of my mom's house and my dad's house, because was always a place where you felt good no matter what happened.
Yeah, no, Margaret snapped our Insta story Christmas Eve was just you alone.
Hanging out by myself.
And you're like spinning, you're doing a spinning move through the house, and all it says is, I'm so happy. And you're alone just in your house on Christmas Eve. That's great.
It's true. Yeah, I talked a lot this weekend with some people that are going through some hard times in life, and they're having a really hard time being alone. And they were just like, what are the benefits of being alone?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, let me just begin to tell you, like, if you're not comfortable with it yet, that's okay. It'll take some time. But I've had time throughout my life to get comfortable with it. And so I'm really happy with people, and I'm really happy by myself, because I think it's really a part of being okay with yourself to be able to be alone, which you've definitely worked on over the last 5 years.
I can definitely,
because you used to always like to be alone.
Yeah, I can talk both sides of that conversation, because there was a point in time where I just didn't want to be alone with my thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, my thoughts never turned off. Like, my brain never turns off. It's just always on. And I'm always in a state of evaluation or thought. And so every once in a while, I want a reprieve from that. And so, but being alone doesn't help.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a distraction, right? So, and then, when I went through the separation and divorce, and then really focused on myself personally and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to believe in. And then it forced me to be alone. And over time, I just got used to it, and then I started to kind of crave it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't need a lot. I'm an extrovert's introvert. So I'm good up to about 5 people, and above 5, I start to get anxious and sweat a little bit. But I like depth. I like depth in my relationships. So I think that's a function of that, probably. But yeah, being alone is important. So I'm gonna get into some of my observations and my thoughts.
Go for it.
And,
all right, I'm ready. Bring it on.
You're a very inclusive. You're one of the most inclusive people I've ever met. I'm trying to think. I know there's been situations where you might not be a big fan of somebody, but I really rarely think of you. I rarely hear you talk of anybody in language harsher than that. And I know Margaret's friends, and they're very diverse. And your place, it's kind of a deal. It's kind of a thing that people want Margaret's friends. If you're in with Margaret, then you get to have dinner at Mary's house, right? And every once in a while, I'll see an Insta story, and it's dinner at Mary's house tonight, and Margaret has 6 or 7 friends over, and it's a whole thing, and it's not publicized. It's like a pop-up party.
Oh, that's a great idea, a pop-up party.
It's like a pop-up party where it's like all of a sudden I didn't know this was happening, and I wasn't invited, and so I take note of that.
Well, and I feel... for Margaret to include us in her circle of friends is just like the biggest treat as a parent. It's such a treat.
But where does that... I'm curious about that sense.
It's a mutual respect, I think. So I respect her and she respects me, and I love all of her friends. It's just a real treat to be included.
But the inclusivity...
Well, the respect is... Respect's great. Everybody, great. But that sense of inclusivity, you don't see everywhere. I don't see it everywhere. I don't see it anywhere where one person or a couple creates a safe environment for anyone to walk into. And I mean anyone. I mean, if I walked into that party, it's a wide spectrum of people, and I can't talk to all of them, really. Because of that. It's so diverse and it's so broad.
I think I learned a lot early on in my career when I worked with special needs students. So I worked with a lot of autistic kids. I worked with a visually impaired young man. deaf and hard of hearing. So I think I probably have a little extra sense of accepting everyone as they are, because I've dealt with so many different kids who have very limited communication skills, and so looking for little clues of communication, and then of course autistic children and students. So I think I just really love being accepting of others, or clearing the pathway for everyone to be included. Maybe that's the big thing. I don't know. I don't have any expectations of anyone acting a certain way, and I kind of just like everybody to be a little different. Because I am, and I like that people accept me. Yeah. Some people don't like me. Yeah. Some people don't like me at all, and it's hard because I always want everybody to like me, and I try to be just casual me, just be you, casual me. So
yeah. But the inclusivity, it's one of my biggest things. Do you think you don't feel like you had that as much before the special ed work?
Well, I was in a big family, so I was number 5 of 6 kids, and so you kind of motor along. And growing up, I went to Catholic school, and the nuns would say, "Oh, are you going to be like your older sisters? Or are you going to be like Monica? Are you really smart like Tina and Carrie?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm me." So I barely made it through school. I did not have good grades. I went off to college and then went to work for a bank. And I think there were just expectations of how are you going to be? And I was like, just let me be myself. I'm just a friendly person. That's all I am. I'm just a friendly, nice person. I'm very responsible and reliable. And that's why I think I'm good at my job, is because I take the time to look on the other side of the counter when parents come in. Sometimes they come in just for the very first time and they're really afraid. They don't think, "Oh, should I go in? My kid forgot his lunch." And I try to just be super welcoming and understanding and put them at ease. And then that person says, "Oh, go ahead, go into the office. Mary's really nice. She'll help you." So it just spreads one upon one like a domino effect. So the nicer you are to one person, it's just going to come around. So what goes around comes around. I firmly believe in it. It's every single person, every single moment. I'm very in the moment. Mm-hmm. And I love having people come to my home and sharing my home and doing projects. And because people start talking, when they share around the table, they start talking, and they share some really big events in their lives or feelings.
Sharing is a big word for you.
It is. I love to share. I really do, but I realize some people it's very difficult for. Yeah. So it's hard to rein myself in.
No, when I first met you, it became, and because I'm an extrovert, and I'm pretty transparent. I feel like, I mean, that goes along with my personality as far as being outspoken and blunt, and is kind of not really editing myself or censoring myself too much. And I felt very warmly accepted by you, and then you were so excited because I was somebody that would share. We could sit down. If you wanted to sit down and have a conversation for 3 hours, let's go. Yeah. I can do that. And your eyes lit up and your countenance changed.
Yeah.
And so you really seem to find treasure in the depth of conversation with people.
Yes. Yep.
And getting to know them and why they are.
And it's just the simple things. I'm not a philosophical person. I'm just a very simple, caring, sharing person. And that's what I love about people. I just love hearing their stories and getting to know them. When the kids come in the office, every year there's always a couple kids that I connect with, and they come in, "How are you? What's in the daily bulletin? What's for lunch?" And it's just an excuse to come in, and I'll say, "Oh, this is what's for lunch." And sometimes,
what do you think you'll do for that sense of connection after you retire?
I don't know. I thought I was going to work till I was 70, and I realized this past year the only reason I wasn't retiring was because I was afraid of what was going to be
the
next.
Abyss.
Yes, I was afraid of it. And afraid of what was going to happen at home, if I was going to be mean to my husband because I was going to be home 24/7 with him, if I was going to be, not, and I was going to miss the personal connection with all the staff and Mr. Flo and the kids. And so then I decided I had to face that fear and just do it, because I've worked a long time, and I think the next step will be exciting as well, and I'm looking forward to it.
So Margaret, when you hear her talk about that sense of inclusion in people, do you think you've learned from that?
Oh, God, yeah, 100%.
I mean, because you do the same thing.
No, totally. And actually, it reminded me of something Jim Sorensen said last year at the retreat. Jim is the program developer for Fierce Incorporated. And the first 5 minutes he sat down, came in, and we were finishing up lunch before he was going to get started talking. And he looked around and he said to me, "You've created a really inclusive environment." And I was like, "Oh, yay, he feels it." And he's just even brand new to this right now. Yes, I feel like Mom says a lot of things like, "I'm not philosophical," or "I'm not," she doesn't call herself smart, and she very much is. She's a different kind of smart compared to her sisters. They all have their own unique things. And so she has taught me how to think big picture. So I think inclusive in the retreat ripples out to inclusive in then their community, their families, because they take what they've learned and they start sharing it, which leads to the city, which leads to the state, which leads to beyond. That's how big I think. And so by me doing small things like this and she doing small things like that, we actually are making a much bigger impact than what we even realize, because people go off and talk about it. And so, yes, absolutely. Like, by being inclusive, we're here to learn from each other as humans. Like, that's why I don't think of her. Well, I told the story, I think, in one of the podcasts where I walked into the mall when I was 13 and I said, like, "I don't care who sees me here with my mom because I love spending time with her," which is a big deal at 13 when you could be thought of as not cool, or, I did not feel included. When I was in junior high and high school, I struggled a lot with not having, I felt like, good friends.
Is that mostly because of your height?
Completely.
How tall are you? I mean,
at 14, and then when I started as a freshman in the varsity team in volleyball, I was 6 foot already.
Well, you're 14 and 6 feet tall.
Yeah, so I was already feeling stuck out. But I was like, I feel like I'm an old soul in this body. Like, this is not the first time I've been on Earth. I don't know, but I felt like I was thinking and wanting to talk about things that other people my age didn't want to talk about. Not just because they just weren't interested in it. I didn't date in high school. I was very much like, I didn't feel like I was meant to be there. And so I want to never make someone feel like that. And so that's what Mom does. In her high school, that's what I do in my environment. I don't care what position you're in, whether you're an admin or an owner or a leader in any capacity. That's where I think I have a lot of respect for you and I and our partnership, because that's how we both have worked at it. You've never just thought of me as an admin. I know that. And so my whole purpose in life, I think, is to build community and inclusivity.
Well, and as I sit across from both of you and think about how I know there are people that look at either what I've done or what you've done with on the admin side and wondered how we did it. Mm-hmm. Like, how'd you do it?
Yes.
And they're seeing, like, the forest and not the individual trees.
Yep.
Where for you guys, I can see that sense of inclusivity is it's just one stone repeated a million times.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's being nice to that one person and doing that an exponential amount of times. So then you have a community.
Yeah.
But it starts with that one person.
Yeah, but it starts really small, and I think a lot of times people don't want to do the work to do those little steps. But actually what I was laughing yesterday because the Mary Poppins movie that just came out that we went to see, I was like, she said so many things that I just forgot about in that movie that were so classic to how we operate. It's like, I tell people oftentimes with the retreat, specifically the operations retreat, I aim to do the impossible to make people realize what's possible. Because a lot of times we think what's impossible is actually so possible. But we've taught ourselves, or society has taught us that to limit ourselves. And so a lot of those things in that movie reminded me of how we operate completely. Yeah, it was really cool.
It's a great movie.
I have such a different perspective, and that's why I'm a little bit fascinated with the Smith family. Because, and I've said it before on the podcast, but you guys really, when I think about an idyllic family, you guys are it. And I don't mean it in like this, like
Leave It to Beaver way.
Ward Cleaver, that's exactly what I was thinking of. I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it in the sense that you've really created a space where your kids can be themselves. And that I've heard stories, so I know that's true throughout their entire life. It wasn't just at the end when everything's easy. And I, in contrast to that, I had to pretend I was someone else in order to survive, is how I felt. I had to pretend I was a certain way because anything other than that wasn't acceptable. And so that's why I'm just so fascinated by your guys' dynamic. And Mary specifically, like that sense of inclusivity extended to everybody, because I didn't see that growing up. It it was very rigid, and you had boundaries, and certain people didn't get in, no matter what. So one of my questions, I know Margaret this year has let go of a lot of relationships, something we've talked about privately. And it's something I think that's just a point of maturity. I think I was really proud a few years ago that I didn't let friendships go, that I hung on to all of them, and I was that loyal person that would never say die. And then I let one go, and I was like, I felt amazing. I felt so different, and relief, and this pressure valve was let go. And so I'm curious, for creating such an inclusive environment, how do you know when to let someone go?
That's a good question. I guess probably for your own health. I think you know when something is not good any longer. So maybe you're not good in the relationship as well, I guess. I think that, but you're right. Being loyal, you kind of want to hang in there. But sometimes a moment of clarity comes and you say, maybe this isn't a match meant to be, and you've put your all into it, and then you just kind of let it go. But I have a big commitment to family and friends for sure. I mean, commitment is a huge kind of life goal with me, is to be I'm in a committed relationship with my husband, and then of course very committed to our children, and I always believe that you give people the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes things happen in relationships that might cause a rift, but I have definitely let some friendships kind of wean away, and then it doesn't mean I wouldn't be happy to see that person when they came back into my life again. But you sort of have to balance what you can manage in your life, I guess.
Something
because you don't want to be a martyr and a doormat. No. And I've been a doormat before, and it's not a good thing. You say, hey, people are taking advantage of you.
That's what I was going to say. Because of your personality, you often attract people that are not the healthiest.
People try to take advantage.
And same for me, like sometimes toxic people. And I was just talking to my friend Layla, who's also my tenant, and I said, I don't know why this happens, but throughout my life I've seen certain people that come to me or come to my family because I don't know. And she said, you're a healer. And I was like, oh my God, what? What does that mean? And she said, you have healing capability. People want to be around you because it feels good. And it doesn't mean that you have to befriend all of them, but they'll leave when you set that boundary. And so, like you said earlier, actually, I have an example of someone who actually caused me eventually physical pain. And I didn't realize that you could have pain in your body due to someone. But when it was there for long enough, I realized, okay, this might be something. And then when I said goodbye to that person, the pain went away. And that's insane to think that, and so we have to, I think that's where we can weigh really heavily on the loyal, loving, inclusive side. Then where we have to push back on ourselves is where do we draw the line? Because there has to be a line somewhere, because otherwise we're not going to be able to keep doing what we're doing without conserving energy and making sure that people don't step on us.
You said something, Mary, that made me... I think there's probably a correlation. I'm making a correlation too. So benefit of the doubt is a huge thing for me. Giant thing for me. I bring it up all the time. And I think it's probably based on that sense of loyalty, right? That if you're loyal to somebody, they should know that our actions are to their benefit, right? And to not give us that sense of trust is a betrayal. I just have never thought of that being a loyalty thing, but that benefit of the doubt thing is so important.
And then from the 4 agreements, the assume nothing. I mean, I have to say that daily. Assume nothing. Don't assume anything, because the moment you do that, you think, oh, they've hurt me. They meant to hurt me by leaving me out.
I can say that for both of you. Can I speak freely?
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
I can say for both of you, out of the 4 agreements, I could see the don't take things personally and don't make assumptions. I can see those coming up for you guys.
Totally.
Why is that?
Well, it makes me think right away of, because I care so passionately. I'll just speak for myself, and I know Mom does too, but I feel so passionately for other people. I feel such empathy that I can't understand. I still don't understand how someone can't feel the same for me. And so when something happens, I do take it personally right off the bat, because I know that I would never do that to them. because I can put myself in their shoes and understand what it might feel like. Some people do not have capacity for empathy, and I didn't understand that because I grew up in such an empathetic environment. I assumed that's how everybody else was. And so that's been one of the toughest lessons for me to learn, and to have compassion for them still when I understand that they may never understand me. They may never understand why I do what I do. They're not capable of that kind of empathy, at least not yet. So that's why I jumped. That's why I've gotten better at it, but absolutely it's still a tendency. So I have to say, don't take it personally, Margaret. It's not about you. They're probably not, you're not even in their mind. Or don't assume that and then create a story for yourself that just makes you feel worse. Because I have an extreme amount of empathy. I don't know why or how, but I've never experienced hardly anything tragic in my life. And I am surrounded by people who have, and I can understand that pain. I can actually feel it physically without it happening to me. And so when I tell people that, and that's actually what Christina Jagel said to me one time, is she was like, I know you haven't experienced what I have, and yet you understand. And I can see the sincerity in that. So
yeah, I can say that's true as well in my life.
So I don't know about for you with the don't take it personally thing. If that's why. Yeah.
Shut up your head is a good one.
That's a good one, yeah.
I've used that a lot because you just have to move forward and just go and give people the benefit of the doubt.
And then have those few people around you, like my mom and dad for me. I was telling them the other night, like, without them and a few other key people in my life, I have to make sure I do have a few people that I can turn to when I need some help, because there's times when I need to be refueled too, and I need someone who understands, and my mom totally understands. She has that level of empathy, so you have to have a couple of people you can lean on. I can't do everything alone, for sure. Yeah.
So, and I don't want to lump you guys together on everything, even though I think you guys are very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Mary, how do you see Margaret being different than you?
That's interesting.
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. Well, I think she's a bigger risk taker than I am, for sure. I don't know if she's always been one or has grown into being one, but I'm not much of a risk taker in the world, like outside activities, as well as also some of her big ventures that she's taken on. So I try to stay within my comfort zone, definitely. So I think she's a bigger risk taker. She's always telling me that she's an introvert, and it's just such a surprise to me. I never would have said an introvert ever. Yeah. Never. I didn't see it.
And maybe I'm actually not. I don't know. I'm still exploring that.
So I always felt like she was just very specific, or not, maybe specific isn't the right word, but just like in choosing her friends or in choosing what she wanted to do. So she wasn't as gung-ho as me just to do anything. I felt like she was very specific in her choice of friends and choice of activities, but not being an introvert. But then lately, I feel like she's more of a risk taker. But I think that's very freeing, too. I think it's empowering and freeing, and probably part of just maturing into who she is today.
I'm thinking through the friends comment that you're very specific about your friends. I'm trying to determine if I think that's true.
For people that are close to me, yes. Yeah.
Well, I have lots of casual friends. Lots of casual. And I have lots of casual friends. I have lots of people who think they are totally my best friend.
That's what people tell me. I have lots of people that call me their best friend.
And that's nice. I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's very few people. There's that quiz. They say you're doing well if you have, but somewhere between 1 to 3 close friends. And yeah, I mean, I would say I have like 3 that are close, meaning that I can say absolutely anything to and feel a total freedom and relaxation when I'm around them. Because I know people think it's funny, but so you don't get to see all sides of Margaret all the time, because there's a lot of, when I get really angry, people don't like to see that. They wouldn't like to see that.
No.
It's like my mom has seen that openly, because I know I can be open with her about that, and she knows it's just a passing moment. But I don't think anybody needs to see that. It's not something that the whole world, I don't put anything on social media that's negative, hardly ever, if at all, because I don't believe that's something that needs to be spread. I think that's everybody has their moments. I have my moments when I'm down, and I can work through them with people that I love that are around me, but I don't need to expose the world to that. So my close friends are the ones that I feel like I can, be with completely, and that negativity or whatever that momentary lapse of Margaret is something they can deal with okay. So, yeah, I have a lot of acquaintances, and that's where I try to be true and honest with them, too, and so they know that, I have a wide circle of friends, but I can't be everybody's best friend. I can't be everything to everyone, which people have said before that I am, and I very much can't be.
Mary, when you have dinner at Mary's place and have Margaret's friends over and someone didn't make the cut.
Someone didn't make the cut.
Let's just say for whatever reason, like Margaret has had to let some relationships go. Do you take notice of that and come around to Margaret and ask her about that person and why isn't there a relationship anymore? Or how's that work?
I haven't. Probably haven't. No, because I guess I respect her privacy for that. She would tell me when she wanted to.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody I haven't told her about. I probably come to her and talk to her about it before she asks me about it. Yeah, I'll just say this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. I'm very open with her about everything. Probably the only things I don't talk to her about right away are something that I feel like she might feel fear for me or be scared for me on something. But even then I tell her about everything having to do with the house. I mean, she knew right along everything that was happening, the financial risks I was taking, the fact that the house had more issues than what we thought it did. I mean, I needed that support. Even if she felt fearful for moments about what might happen. I could have gone into massive debt with that place if I hadn't had the contractor I had and the people I had around me. But I'd probably come to her and say, here's what's happening with this person. Just FYI, I like someone to know. And that is the introverted part of me, is I could hole up. And it's actually what my dad kind of does. He'll hole up and then he could get really angry and kind of explode. And so I need to let that out. Or that's what will happen. And I've recognized that. I saw that in him. I see it in myself. Mm-hmm. So if I talk about it, it's a much healthier way of dealing with it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You took an air like you're going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, too, it took me a while to respect Margaret's need for silence sometimes because I'm so chatty. So sometimes I know she just wants to be quiet and it's okay and it means she's happy, but sometimes the silence just kills me.
Well, that's the same for Jesse, actually.
Let's talk about that. I hear you, sister. Testify.
I know.
Preach it.
He used to think that I was upset all the time because I don't listen to music when I work. And it's because if I'm doing something new, I need that concentration to be able to do the task. But he used to think I was upset with him or upset with someone or anything like that. So I know that's what sometimes the silence people feel like.
Well, there's a few things there for me. I realize I'm super sensitive to passive aggressive behavior.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, people that use the silent treatment as a form of punishment, piss off. I hate them. I can't. It's passive aggressive. I just hate it. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you were giving me the silent treatment. It's just you were being quiet.
Yeah.
But I read into that because that's
that's how you were raised too. Yeah.
Back to the assume nothing.
Yeah, I had to assume no. That's the hard part for me. I had to unprogram that out of my head because I had to make assumptions all the time, and primarily because growing up son of a stoic Montana cowboy, you don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about anything. You do what you're told, and that's it. So you have to assume a lot. So yeah, unwinding that knot was tough work.
Well, yeah, you had to lean towards not assuming anything, and then I had to lean towards being able to speak up more and talk more about how I was feeling if something was wrong, because I can very much say no, everything's good and keep going, and I have to make sure that I voice things.
I think that's one compromise that we've made that we can put pin that to the wall and say this is done.
Yeah,
where we would have a disagreement or something would happen between us, and then Margaret would need 10 days to process it, and I'm the guy that needs it fixed right now, so I can move on to the next thing. I can be done and move on, because I'll think about it, and I'll worry about it, and I'll obsess about it. And so Margaret and I, it took time, but over time, I said, you're this way, and I'm this way, and we need to find some way to come together.
Yeah.
Because I can't wait 10 days. And
you also didn't realize you didn't want to hear from me in the moment because it probably wouldn't be pretty if you did. Because I needed some time to process it and say it in a way that made sense and where I could get the emotion out of it, because I'm such an emotional person, as are you, that I wouldn't say it in a good way if it first came out right away.
Yeah.
I can do that better now. I think I have more control now over my emotions, but...
Well, and I've learned better to check in with you, too, and accept your answer for what it is.
Yeah.
So if you say it's not about me, then I assume that's true.
Yeah.
I don't think that was always the case.
No.
But I think that that's important for people to understand that, if you and your boss have different communication styles.
Which we've talked about a lot, yeah.
You just got to make sure you acknowledge it, talk about it, and then figure out a compromise. So our compromises, I would say, I definitely give it more than a day. And generally, we give it a deadline. Generally, I'll say, okay, I need to know by 3 days' time. And so...
It's so funny because I don't feel like that's happened in a while now because we don't have those things pop up as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good. Yeah.
All right, and then I think we should kind of end with sharing.
Oh, I love it.
I do want to talk real quick before, though, because I think sharing's a great idea. I did want to talk about networking a little bit because I've had a few questions pop up about networking.
Sure.
And so somebody has asked me recently, they said, I really she said, I really acknowledge that you are a great networker. You know how to meet people, you know how to connect people, you know how to make things happen. And she was saying that she recognizes that she doesn't. So she said, do you think that's inherent or do you think that's learned behavior? It's something that I really want to work on. And so my first thought was, I remember you saying to me when I got the job at the museum, because that was from a connection through Kathleen, who used to be in the PTA with you. And so when I said I wanted to apply to the Seattle Art Museum, you said, well, let's reach out to Kathleen. And I did it. And so a lot of times you would suggest things to my brothers, and they wouldn't take you up on it. And not sure why, if they just wanted to go their own way, but I was always willing to try it. I was always willing to say, okay, I'll call Kathleen. I mean, if my mom knows someone, at least she could put in a good word for me. And I got that job because of that, I really believe. And so I quickly learned from you by watching you in the PTA, watching you in other parent groups, seeing what you did out in public, whether I'm an introvert or not. I understood that by meeting people, being kind to them, giving, when you needed to, you could call someone up and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? How can I get to that person? And that's essentially how I began to learn to network and also kind of do PR marketing work, which you're totally PR marketing, all of that. Not in the same way where I've taken it now and I'm doing it visually, like on social media. But you're absolutely, I mean, yeah, like when my cousin Robbie, her sister's son, talks about the people that he meets, because he's on the Seattle City Council, everybody knows Mom. Everybody knows Mary Smith. And that's how you've really, gone out into the community and made a name for yourself without even maybe realizing you were. So I don't know if do you feel like networking is inherent to someone or?
No, I think you can totally become it or live it or learn it. It's just taking time and paying attention. That's it. So you just take some time when you're visiting with people or talking to people, and you pay attention to what's going on and what they need, what they want to talk about, what's important to them, and that's it. And it's just taking time. People need to slow down and take time to really listen to people and talk to them. So the connections that I've made through the district, over the 27 years, I probably know so many district people just because I've listened to them. And when you listen to people, they remember it. They're like, oh, yeah, she paid attention to me and she gave me a name of someone to help me with my home or something. Yeah. You never know what connection it's going to be. So it's just recognizing people and taking time. But you can totally learn it. It's just a habit. It's a habit to build a positive habit. And I think it's really important to follow up on connections. Like Margaret's connection with Kathleen Mackey at the museum was a real treat. She was like, oh, Margaret's daughter, yes, come on in, let me introduce. It didn't guarantee a job, but it was a foot in the door. So when I grew up on Capitol Hill, which is this, filled with large Catholic families. So there were always families that all knew each other, and the parents all kept track of each other's kids. And so a lot of sense of community, probably from growing up on the Hill. So maybe that's where my community base comes from, that strong feeling of building a community. building a family home and including friends. I always felt like when the kids grew up, we had a good family home for other people's kids. So I always was really happy when the boys and Margaret brought friends home, because I felt like it was a really safe environment for kids to be. And I think that's critical in this world, is just everybody can provide a community and a connection. So through networking or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think I've noticed something too in knowing both of you in regards to that, and some coaching that Margaret's been doing. I think there has to be a high degree of selflessness in order to network the way you guys do.
Yeah.
In order to listen, what's the thing you've been saying a lot lately about listening? That you're...
Oh, listen to hear, not to respond.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think both of you listen to hear.
Yeah.
You're not formulating what you want to say next. And then that means that the intention is higher with every single person you're in contact with. So I think as a hack for this style of networking, I would say really take a look at selfishness behavior and selfless behavior, and focus on moving the needle towards the selfless side.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Because my first thought was, there's never anybody that I don't respond to on Facebook or Instagram or in person, or you could be any person, like I was saying earlier, from any position, from someone who's the director of first impressions at a Keller Williams office to an admin in the financial industry or whatever. I respond to everybody. I listen to everybody the same. I don't assume anything about maybe why are they reaching out to me? Do they want something from me? My first assumption is always, or my first thing is always, how can I help them? And I listen. So I do agree. It's a lot more selfless than what most people want to do. I spend a lot of time listening, more than most people would. And that I think this question is a great one, because I think it just all goes down to something really simple, which is listening. And I just think most people don't want to do it.
And it doesn't require any money.
No
it doesn't
money.
require any level of education
No.
or anything. It's just a very simple skill.
And you're right.
Power.
Like, people want to be listened to.
Oh, so bad.
And it seems
so
like
bad.
that's
That
getting
affirmation.
worse and worse and worse.
It is, yeah. And I feel like Susan Scott's talked about this before, too, in her book, which I haven't reread in a while. But,
All right, the new edition talked about social media.
Okay.
And how, it's
Yeah.
affecting listening.
Yeah, because I there's certain memories, that you hold on to for sure, and one of them I have is one of my first boyfriends, Jonathan Hackett, probably never listened to this podcast, but he said to me, one of the first things he said to me was, "You listened so well." Because I was listening, I was asking questions, which showed I was listening, and I thought nothing about what I needed for myself or what. And I think by doing that, that's where people can read that I'm being my authentic self, which we talk about how authenticity is so kind of overused, that word. I'm an authentic person. I'm authentic. Well, show me you're authentic. Actually be here and hear me.
Right.
So I try to do that for sure, sincerely. Yeah.
That's one of the things I don't like about texting. Because you can misinterpret a text. I'd rather talk to somebody on the phone.
You have to
so misinterpret.
Yeah, you have to throw emotion out the window if you're texting.
Totally.
You just have
All
to.
it's good for is see you in 5 minutes. That's it.
Well, unless you, I
That's
think
it.
I
Or I'm
disagree.
in a car accident.
I think
Then I would hope you would call.
I think you could have an established a list of boundaries with somebody.
Yeah.
To where you can communicate effectively on text.
Yeah.
As long as you have agreed upon that.
Yeah.
You're not going to assume anything, and nothing
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
No texting caps. That
All
means you're
capital letters.
angry.
Yeah, that means anger. Any email.
You're learning a lot.
Yeah.
You prefer to communicate with buttons.
Yes, buttons. Very critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love making buttons. Yep. Awesome.
All right, so sharing. I want
Anytime.
you to talk a little bit about what that means to you and why it's important. And I want you to do it in such a way that listeners can take it home and do it.
Oh, sure. Okay. Sharing is just for me like the most, if I use the word intimate, but it's the most intimate experience that you can have with another person. It's very simple. It's very honest, and it kind of just happens, and it grows, and it can be from saying, usually when the kids were growing up, when the boys had friends over and Margaret had friends over, I said for sharing, it had to be a feeling. You can't say, hey, basketball practice was great. Because I wanted the kids to talk about feelings, because feelings just get ignored, and you stuff them and you don't deal with them. And it can be just a simple feeling of, hey, my grandmother passed away, and sad about it, and then people might talk about what their grandmother did or something. Just it leads from one thing to the other. So when you share in a circle at the table, oftentimes someone way down the line is getting more from the sharing of this one person than you realize. So it's shared experiences, shared frustrations, shared joys. It's how people survive and learn a lesson through that sharing. One of the teachers over the holidays sent me a video in Spanish about people sharing at a table, and I sent it to Margaret. So they were asking kids about, what's your parents' favorite, food, or where did your parents meet? And the kids didn't have any idea what they knew about their own family, but they knew things about the internet or emojis and things, and they realized that the family needs to share, and the family needs to talk and say, how did you and your husband meet? How did you, what was your favorite thing to do growing up? And so I think that's my thing about sharing, is it's getting to know a person on a certain level, but it's also helping them learn about themselves. I think when you talk about things, when you say them out loud, they become real in a different way. You express them in a different way, and maybe it might even be a self-realization time where you're like, wow, I didn't really think that was how I felt about it. But it's just taking the time and asking people to think about their life, think about their experiences and their friendships and relationships and what's important to them. And those things come out in the strangest ways. And I think it's just important not to neglect that piece in the busy world where we're working and dealing with, short-term little conversations and things, and we don't really take that extra time. So sharing is critical, but I realize it causes people some stress and anxiety, so that bothers me. That I'd like to accomplish some way to make it easier for people. So sometimes I share first, trying to talk about just little things, because I think people think, this has got to be something really, poignant or really earth-shattering, and I
totally realize I just do that too. When because I think the way you make it easy is you say, when we share, it's not some big ordeal. It's like, hey, let's have dinner. Let's go around and say, you used to say when you were growing up, tell us something good that happened in your day and how did it make you feel. So Ben, my brother Ben would say, I got up at 6:45 a.m., then I ate breakfast, and he'd have the longest story. Yeah. But it's really simple, and it's just something you should do on a daily basis. But what you made me realize was I will oftentimes go first in order to show people that you can do something really simple. So the talent show we did at Thanksgiving this year, I went first and did something really silly. It wasn't even a talent. I faked it. It was
very cute.
Lip singing. It was with the glasses and everything. But I did it in order for people to understand, this is what I meant by doing this. Let's just be silly and realize that you can do fun things and not care so much about what you look like or think. And so I think with the sharing piece, it was something we did every day at dinner, and people joked about it, and now people ask to do it when they come to our house. So obviously people want to talk.
I think it made an impact.
Oh, for sure.
And that's the biggest thing also with networking and sharing, is you never know the impact. You never know it. You may know it 10 years
people
later,
will come
5
up to you
years
later. Yeah. Some of the boys' friends will come up to us when we see them at parties and say, oh my gosh, remember when I shared at your house about la 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 la? And I may not remember half of what they said, but I know that it made an impact on them. So, yeah. And
that's the other thing I believe about what goes around comes around. So it always comes around back to you. You just never know when it's going to be. But and it can be really life-saving or life-changing for someone. Yeah. So that's how exciting to be a part of that. It's very nice.
So there's leadership in that, too, sharing, if you guys are having to lead by example.
Oh, totally, yeah.
You're doing it and you're kicking it off to set the tone.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times I feel like sometimes we think, I talked about this with Jessica too, and you kind of talked about it earlier, we don't necessarily see ourselves as these smart, really intelligent people, and by sacrificing what may make us feel stupid or silly, or we understand that some people may think of us as silly or stupid, it's actually one of the bravest things we can do, because we're setting an example, and we think we're confident enough about ourselves to put ourselves out there, understanding that people may not get what we're doing. And I think that is super critical to leadership, is I'm not afraid to look silly or stupid because I know who I'm doing it for, and that matters more to me than what I look like. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, for sure.
Well, and one other thing with sharing is you never know what someone else is going through. You never know.
Some of those kids at the school are going through some really
someone could have a
crappy
cancer
things.
diagnosis or have a really bad situation, and you could be that one person in their life in that day that takes the time. And I know Andy does it at work at QFC. He'll have long lines of people who want to share and hear his stupid joke when they could go through the speed lane, but they want to stay and talk to him because he takes that moment very simply to ask them about their day or tell them a stupid joke or whatever. And that's like people will wait in line to talk to him.
Yeah, he never passes
hysterical.
the speed test. Whenever they test like how fast he's going, he's always the slowest because he's like, I don't care if it takes extra time. If they want to come buy their groceries from me and spend some time asking me about my family, I'll talk to them. He's like, that matters more to him than going quickly.
Yeah, he got written up by the company for being too slow. So then he had to like speed it up. And then it was like, man, I don't even think it was a year later. And the manager said, I can't believe it. But we're actually going to go to the Andy Smith method of take the time and talk to people because that was the feedback from customers is they want customer service. They want a connection. So he
and I see in real estate, we make that mistake often. You know,
being transactional or something.
Yeah, and not really trying to make connections with people, get to know them on a deeper level. That can sustain a longer-term relationship. You know,
totally.
Yeah. Well, should we? I'm wondering if we should share now.
Oh, sure.
Each of us share something.
Okay.
And since you guys are the masters at this, I feel like you should kick it off.
Do you want it to be about anything in particular?
You guys, you're going to teach our listeners how to do this tonight when they go home.
Well, let's see. It's the day after Christmas.
So let's imagine that we're at home.
At dinner.
We're at Mary's place for dinner.
Okay.
I've been invited this time. And
got some feelings about this.
We're going around the table. And how's this work?
Okay. Well, I'll start. Let's see. I think probably what I would want to share right now is I didn't do gifts this year for Christmas, really. And we exchanged names as family and everything, and I got my brother Ad and Ashley and their baby Theo. So I'll give them something when they get back from Vegas. But I shared that I actually wrote letters this year for Christmas to everybody. And so part of that was because I don't have a lot of money to do the things that I'd like to do for people materialistically. But then also I realized that I often don't take the time to tell people how I feel about things, or I don't often get the chance to in person as much. So I went through my list. I wrote down actually like 30 names, which is a lot of letters. And I started about 2 weeks ago, and I'm still working my way through my list. But I'm giving everybody in my friends and family and work circle a letter with what I love about them the most, and then what I wish for them in the new year. And so, and then I'm telling people about it. So like when I got my eyebrows waxed last week by this sweet girl, we were talking about Christmas shopping, and I told her what I was going to do. I told the lady at the checkout stand what I was doing because she asked if I was shopping or if I was done shopping. And by telling people about it I think it's making them realize maybe I can do something different this year for Christmas too. And so that's my sharing, is that I feel like I'm really glad that I decided to do that. I feel really positive about it. I think I don't have a problem sharing things with my brothers, but I think it's fun for them to have something in writing from me, so that they understand how much I love them and that how much I appreciate their support, because they've always supported me no matter what I do. So that's my sharing.
Yes, and I will share that Margaret's letter was very beautiful, and I'm going to save it forever. It was really sweet. It was very sweet. She's a very thoughtful, caring person.
Did she give you a word for the year? Or a word in general?
I don't know that I gave her a word for the year.
What was the quote at the end? She did a
the quote was about having faith. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and for my sharing, so I guess the biggest thing for me right now is the whole retirement thing, and coming to the idea that I'm actually going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I told everybody at the very start of the year, which I don't know if my principal was very happy about or not, but people have asked me for years. Maybe it's because I'm all gray. I don't know. Oh, you're still here. Have you retired? Aren't you retiring? So I finally decided at the start of the year, I'm just going to say I'm retiring. Yeah. And then, of course, the next question is, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I'm just going to be my bad self. I'm just going to have bad behavior. I don't have any big plans. I'm not a traveler. I don't have any European plans, nothing. I'm just going to do nothing. Like the Christopher Robin quote, I think, and something is just like, do nothing, and then out of that something will happen. Yeah. Something will happen. So do nothing is my big goal for retirement. But it's been really fun to talk about it with people and share it, and I feel such a sense of relief in coming to terms with it. So I think for me, the biggest next chapter of my life is just really enjoying the unknown, and that I don't have a daily schedule and have to call for a sub for myself. I mean, it'll be very strange, but I'm excited about it. And so that's what I tell people when they ask me about what I'm going to do. I say nothing, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That question always happens at different parts of life. It's so funny to me. After I was done with college, it was, what are you going to do next? And I used to make up an answer and say, I'm going to be Indiana Jones. And then immediately they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But if you have an idea, let me know. Like, people ask because they want to start conversation. I get it, but it's so funny. Like, so I think it's great that you're just telling them, I don't know, because it'll happen as it's supposed to. Yeah.
Poor Andy.
I know, poor Andy. Get ready.
Andy is Mary's husband, and I'm gonna have to.
He's gonna have a great time.
He better have a schedule. He better have a schedule where he's going to the gun range.
That's right.
And doing what he needs to do to get out of the house, so Mary doesn't find out that her next project is Andy.
I
know. See, and I think this is harder for me. It's funny. I mean, I'm an open and transparent person, but when you're put on the spot, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I think, the main thing I'm dealing with is I have extreme back pain.
Yeah.
And it's becoming psychological for me, where I can't.
Are you feeling afraid?
Yeah, it's not going to get better, and I'm just going to be this way the rest of my life, or that I'm not going to be able to do certain things. And it's affecting me on a daily basis, because I may not be able to put weight. I don't know when I wake up if I'm going to be able to put weight on my legs or not.
Yeah, that's scary.
And I'm pretty good with pain. I can tolerate a lot of pain. In fact, the only time I had cavities, I was 18 years old, and I didn't have them give me Novocaine.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I had 3 cavities drilled out and then filled without any pain medication. And for me, I'm just so impatient. Yeah. I didn't want the Novocaine to numb my mouth be like useless the rest of the day. And so it's just a matter of function for me. And so I can endure a lot of pain, which is probably not helping me, because I think I've let it go longer than I should because of that. Because I can just grit my teeth and bear it. And I'm to the point where I can't grit my teeth and bear it anymore. And so there's just a lot behind that.
What's like the scariest part to you? Is it seeing the doctor? Is it like confronting what it might be, or what is it?
You know, I consider myself an active person, which probably isn't true since I hurt my back. I hurt my back, and the last time I hurt it badly was 2013, right after I got back from Italy, my trip to Italy. And I was running, and I was in good shape, and then I hurt my back running with new shoes, and it's just never been the same. And that's how my back is it goes out for a year or two, and then something happens, it gets better. And this time it's not really getting better, and it's affecting my mobility and my activity. And I have young kids, they're 9 to 12 years old. Yeah. I like to do active things, and, I feel like I'm doing too much they're filling my water bottle, they're doing things so I don't have to move as much. And like today, as an example, I was really looking forward to this, and I had to get up early because it takes about 90 minutes for my back to loosen up to the point where I can even leave the house. And so, but I was very diligent. I'm being diligent about it now, where I just have to, I know it's going to take me longer, and I have to do the stretches, and I have to take the medication and hope that it can be good enough for me to get through the day, and then rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And so now, and I am scared of a diagnosis, probably just because it's so much pain that, and I don't want to do surgery, and I may have to, who knows, but I'll find out soon enough because I have to figure it out.
Well, yeah, we want you to be able to be active for sure.
Yeah, so that's the main thing on my mind these days.
Good sharing.
Do we do a good job? Is that good sharing?
You are a good
We will
share
say
always.
prayers for you and good thoughts.
And then do you have like a sharing, like if we were a video game, but your sharing thing would be full off the charts.
Off the
Yeah.
charts.
10 stars.
Fear is a hard
Fear's
one
a good
to
one,
share. Yeah.
Not many people
It's
want to talk
hard to
about
share
fear.
fears. Yeah.
Really and truly.
Well, and growing old's no fun either.
No, not always. And sometimes it could be fun, though. Yeah.
I mean, Andy.
I like my 30s way more than I liked my teens or even...
No, I love being older and being more mature.
But the idea of getting
Mark
older-
Twain had it right. Youth is wasted on the young,
Oh, yeah. That's a good
right?
I overcame my fear of the podcast.
You did.
Yeah,
you
here
did.
I am.
I know,
Yeah.
isn't it fun? It's
Rocking
just,
the podcast.
Rocking
Oh,
the
yeah.
podcast. Mr. Flo is going to be so jealous.
Oh, yeah, he's very jealous. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming and joining us.
Yeah, thank you
today.
for having me.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I was happy to share.
Sharing time. I really like and if I can just impart any wisdom at all to you, which is laughable, but the BU, I think that's a big thing, and that is needed. And
It's so simple, but it's so overwhelming too. I mean, it just
well, I think people need the permission to be themselves. I think so many people don't have that permission. I didn't. I literally had to reinvent myself at 34 years. Well, honestly, it didn't happen. My awareness started at 34 that I had to make a big change in my life because I wasn't operating authentically. And then I didn't do it until I didn't really dive headfirst until I was 38. And that's late in life to like become who you're meant to be and to be you. So I think you doing workshops on
so good,
being
right?
you, I think it'd
That's
be
a great idea.
I think it'd be highly, highly successful.
Well, that reminds me of, I went and got my hair colored on Saturday with Jared, and he was listening to the last podcast about the 5 gifts where we mentioned his question. And he said, actually, the biggest thing he got out of it is at one point I said, in this class I teach, and he immediately was like, I want to teach a class. Margaret just said that's what I want to do. And I was like, that's fantastic. That's what you got out of it. Oh my God, I'm so happy because he's got so much to talk about as well, as far as being yourself,
sharing.
being comfortable, and having empathy. And so, I forget where I was going with that, but basically you can get whatever you want to get out of it. And then also that you just reminded me though, the BU, someone said once, it might have been Susan Scott, write yourself a permission slip. And we got this at the last retreat. Write yourself a permission slip and say, I give Margaret Smith the right to be whoever she wants to be or to go do this today. Sometimes people just have to like understand that they have the power to say, I'm not going to do that today, or I'm going to do this today, and empower yourself to do it. So I think, her teaching a workshop would be so fun.
No, and it'd be a way you'd have social interaction.
That's true.
And you'd be having a huge impact on people.
Yeah, and it could be for just anybody.
What's this look? She's like, Jesse, what are you trying to get me into?
We've made her more uncomfortable in the last couple of years than she's ever had to be outside her comfort zone.
Well, and I should mention this too. I want to quit the podcast before we talk about the fact that you know, before Margaret bought the duplex, you actually learned about multifamily and passive income.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And so you guys had a very nice house.
Yes.
Yeah.
With
And
a wonderful mother-in-law.
Somehow, Margaret planted a seed of thought that said, hey, while this is a beautiful home, it maybe doesn't serve all your needs. Or maybe
we had to take a big leap we'd never been landlords, and we just love it. We have a wonderful tenant, Elaine.
So
She's
Mary,
very happy.
they ended up buying a home that had a mother-in-law, detached mother-in-law. And the idea was to lower, as you prepared for retirement, to lower your housing budget and create passive income.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to take a leap on that one for sure, but Yeah, because we left a beautiful home in Linwood. Yeah. Beautiful.
And how has that decision treated
fantastic. Yeah, it's awesome. It's so wonderful.
It's very good, yeah.
And it's really fun to be a landlord, and we have a wonderful tenant. We love Edmonds. It's really great. And
it was
it's
definitely a
cute
stretch.
Little red house. Yeah.
It was a stretch for you guys, but I was actually
my favorite
surprised
home.
too that Dad totally jumped on board too, and he was like searching for duplexes.
That's your favorite home?
It's my favorite home.
Favorite
home?
home?
We've moved 4 times, and that's definitely my favorite.
Why is that? So I'll
we
just
use
say
every inch of space is why. One thing we use every inch of space. I love it. We just live in that whole house, and it's got a great kitchen, and it's just awesome, and a wonderful yard, a perfect yard.
It's got a kitchen with the cutout window into the shower.
That's
not there anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just a really strong community in the neighborhood. 350 Halloween trick-or-treaters. I mean, just a really fun neighborhood. Very fun.
I love that story because your house was so nice.
It was beautiful.
Like your last home was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
And so a lot of people who walk in would be like, oh, it says a lot of things, right? Either that you've been successful or that you have you just have a nice place to live in. Why would you ever want to leave? The idea that you're actually more happy in a place that's not as nice.
Yeah, we went from a house that was built in, I think, 2008, radiant heat, tankless water heater, to a 1955 Rambler. You know, love it. Love it.
I think that's, more people need to hear that story, just because I think they aspire for the nice thing rather than the thing they want.
The thing they want. Yeah. It's true.
So we have a program that we're working on still called Empty Nester Investor. And the idea being, and you're kind of our first guinea pigs with this, which was taking people whose children were moving out of the house and rather than them moving into a condo or a Rambler, getting them into something that made them passive income. And I remember I had to come to your house, sit you down, do the math for you, show you how it would work and how much money you would have at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. Yeah.
It's awesome.
And I think the fact that you can do it at any age too, like that she wasn't scared to do it in her 60s.
She was a little scared to do it.
I mean, a little bit, but I felt like she was actually pretty fearless.
She leaned into it.
Yeah. You helped me do it.
Are you ready to buy the next one?
Oh, I don't know yet.
I was just talking to them about that over Christmas, and she's like, I'm never leaving this house. I'm never leaving. But we've just talked about, like, what would it be like if you had another one or whatnot. But, yeah, it's a pretty perfect little house.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah.
A starting point at 65. Well, you're never too old to become an investor.
No. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mary Smith.
Oh, thank you.
Overcame all your fears.
Yes.
Came into the Pickett Street studio.
I love it. I love your studio. It's awesome.
And you're like, what is this stuff? And I'm like, this is an actual studio. This is legit.
I love it. I love that you're sharing your stories, too. It's good. It's a good thing.
Well, and where you're from, is this the first podcast you've ever been on?
Yes, totally.
All right.
Officially.
Gold star.
Gold star.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, be you, Mary Smith.
Oh, thank you. Be you.
Thanks, guys.